had the edition of the conclave, the theme we had was India, the Giant Awakens, because there were visible signs of changing shape that were taking place from a perception perspective. There was optimism after PM Modi's clarion call for Make in India and Digital India. We saw a lot of powerful CEOs across the world making a beeline for us. It is befitting then that we take a look at the journey of the India Economic Conclave over the past few years.
I'm extremely grateful to ET Now for having invited me. In every passing day, my optimism would only increase.
In 2013, a dream took flight and plans set the stage. A formidable platform aimed to be that brought together the sharpest minds of the country.
It will take some time to contain this inflation. We are paying a political price for that.
Good economy, you need good politics. Some very important things have been done. There is a huge investment deficit.
Investor essentially is the chooser.
So I would ensure that India gets onto the digital bandwagon at the fastest possible pace.
From astute analysis of India's growth story to bearing witness to India as the giant awakens slowly.
A big push from the Make in India campaign.
I can't visualize how a sector such as energy could ever lose money again.
The stage is now set once again as India Inc. and the biggest policymakers come together to chart the course for India's journey into the IDP. Presenting the third edition of the prestigious ET Now India Economic Conclave 2016.
Well, 2 years on, the theme we have here today is India, the Big Leap. Because the giant hasn't just awakened, but is raring to go. So, backed by a series of reforms, we are closer to realizing GST than ever before, and the recent demonetization drive, though contentious, has given us a chance of building a clean digital economy. But what will it take for India to go from a series of steps to taking that giant leap? And what will it take for us to win in a world that's not that flat anymore, if you go by recent votes, that is, against the status quo, both in US and the UK? By the end of this evening, we hope to have answers and an agenda that will help us take that very big leap. And of course, I would like to remind all of you all to keep your comments and your thoughts, keep us tweeting, just use the hashtag IEC2016. Now, starting with the first panel here, I'm very tempted to refer to them as Indian government's version of Ocean's 11, but I will settle for Modi's 6. It certainly sounds much better than calling them mandarins, doesn't it? Because these 6 bureaucrats, ladies and gentlemen, are responsible for the plumbing that keeps the economy going. They grapple with decisions every day that can make or break sectors. And might I add, it has been make for the most part. Please put your hands together, all of you, together for Economics Affairs Secretary Shaktikanta Das, DIPP Secretary Ramesh Abhishek, Coal Secretary Anil Swarup, and Power Secretary PK Pujari. And to moderate this session, I would like to call on stage the consulting editor of ET Now, Mythili Bhusnurmath.
Well, let me start by welcoming all of you to this first of what I hope is going to be 3, and in fact, I'm going to show this is going to be the first of 3 very lively sessions that we put together for you at this India Economic Conclave. And let me extend a special welcome and a thanks to all our panelists. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for joining here. Unfortunately, as I say, they are all gentlemen. Looks like the Prime Minister's Beti Bachao, Beti Padhao program hasn't really translated onto anything on the ground. So for the moment, we have all 4 gentlemen. But thank you very much for joining us here. And I must say that I'm not going to go on with too many preliminaries because all of them I think are very well known. Mr. Das, I'm sure you'll find your face is more recognized by people on the streets than perhaps, I dare say, even Shah Rukh Khan after what's happened recently. And moreover, I think we have, it's not easy to get 4 secretaries together, and so I'm not going to make the most of my time. But very quickly, I think what we'll do, we'll start with, initially it will be all questions and answers from the panelists. And before we close, we hope to be able to throw the session open so that in case all of you wish to ask any questions, they're there for you. But Mr. Das has to leave a little early in about half an hour's time. He has another meeting to attend. So initially, I will direct most of my fire, quote unquote, to Mr. Das. But Mr. Das, I think you have been really baptized by fire, if there's a word for it. So let me start by asking you something that I'm sure you face a lot of questions on the demonetization or de-legalizing of 500,000 rupee notes. In hindsight, would you agree that the government perhaps did not anticipate the kind of distress and the kind of dislocation that it's caused? And as a result, maybe it could have been handled better, it was a good idea, but botched somehow in execution?
Well, good evening, everybody, and good evening to you and all my colleagues. You said that baptism by fire in the recent days and all. Now, I joined the IAS in 1980. So I think once you join the service, you learn and you get baptized in the first few months itself. And after that, you get used to meeting all kinds of challenges. And always in our career, we face various kinds of challenges, multifarious challenges, so it's not something unusual. Now, coming to this specific question, if you recall, when the announcement was made by the Honorable Prime Minister on the 8th of November evening, he had said that initially there will be some inconveniences. So therefore, we were aware that there will be inconveniences, and there was a plan of action to deal with these situations. And if you see, over the last 8-9 days, the situation has improved every day. Today, the crowds in the counters of banks, in the ATM counters, the queues are shorter and things have improved. And so therefore, it's not correct to say that we did not anticipate the problems. We knew about the problem. There had to be a lot of secrecy around the whole decision. So therefore, many works which we would have liked to do even earlier, we could not do. Take the case of, for example, the ATM recalibration. Now, obviously, we could not have started the recalibration of ATM earlier because that would have raised questions and that would have immediately people would have suspected that something was happening.
But if I can interrupt you here, was the recalibration required at all? The new 2,000 rupee note, had you designed it in such a way that the same ATMs could have handled it, that all this would not have been necessary. So clearly there was some, in terms of execution, maybe some aspects of it, finer aspects of it were overlooked perhaps?
No, I anticipated that question. I knew that you would be asking that question. The reduction in the size of the note was also to print more number of notes in the same time. The process of printing is that you take a big sheet of paper. Each sheet of paper which is taken off in the printing machine can contain obviously as many notes which that length and breadth would contain. So we calculated that if we reduce the size of the notes, as it has been done, in the same amount of time, in the same length of time, we would be able to print many more notes. So therefore, the balance was taken. Inconvenience or the process of recalibration taking about 2 weeks, about 15 days time from the time it is set into motion, and the printing process, the additional notes, number of notes that we will print. So therefore, the balance of advantage was to increase the size, reduce the size of the notes, and to print many more notes during that period. And recalibration process, there is a roadmap. Almost every day, large number of ATMs are getting getting recalibrated, and they are being stuffed with the new denomination 2000 notes. So therefore, these problems were anticipated and we were ready. You see, please remember that we are transforming the entire, it's a part of the Transform India agenda. You are changing the entire, the entire game plan. You are fighting against corruption, you are fighting against black money, you are fighting against fake currency. You are fighting against, you are trying to move from a cash economy, from a cash-based economy into a digital economy. So when you are trying to achieve such big objectives, you are undertaking such a massive transformation in a country of 1.25 billion population. There will be inconveniences here and there, but I think we should, things are improving, and I can assure you that it will improve every day.
I hope you're right on that, because clearly the government is not entirely convinced, because they've gone back and forth on 4,000, 4,500, then digital, the ink on your fingers, which now the Election Commission is not very happy about, now 2,000 rupees. So there has been a bit of flip and flop, which one hasn't associated with the Modi government, number one. Number two, you spoke about the fight against corruption and black money.
I'll forget the questions. Let me first
Okay,
answer
okay, you can answer that.
Now, Election Commission incidentally has not objected at all. Election Commission was consulted right from the time we considered this suggestion. Initially, we thought about it, but we thought we should not do it. Why introduce an additional workload for our bank, staff at the branch? But then we found 5, 6 days, 7 days into the process, we found that the same people were coming back again and again and again into the counters. Roughly 70% of the people standing in the queue were repeat visitors. And obviously there were reports that there are organized groups which are putting these people in the queue, so genuine customers were not able to reach the counter. So therefore a decision was taken to introduce indelible ink. We consulted the Election Commission. All that the Election Commission has said is that there are by-elections coming up in a few states. So keep in mind the fact that the indelible ink during the election is put on the left-hand forefinger. So therefore in our guidelines we have said that it should therefore be put in the right-hand forefinger. Election Commission therefore has not objected. Election Commission has only pointed out this, which has been addressed and which has been taken care of. So that is the first thing I want to clarify. And the second thing
I was just going to ask you, I said, because you spoke about the fight against corruption and black money. Now this of course is only a partial answer, because you're addressing only the stock of black money, right? And that too, the black money which is kept in cash, which is actually a very minuscule portion of the total black money. A far more effective way of tackling both would have been to address the issue of political funding. Why has that not been addressed?
You see, the government has been taking several measures over the last 2.5 years to fight the problem of fight the problem of unaccounted money, tax evasion, corruption. You look at the number of measures which have been taken. I mean, if I start listing out, the list will be endless. The government has, we have renegotiated the tax treaties with Mauritius and with Cyprus. The IDS scheme was introduced recently. Before that, we had the new law and implementation of the unaccounted assets and income, foreign assets and income. And then we had this understanding with the Swiss authorities whereby we started getting information on the so-called HSBC accounts. So there are series of measures. Then the Benami Transactions Act has been enacted. So therefore, a lot of measures have been taken. This particular decision has to be seen in the context of the series of measures which government has taken. And also let us remember that this is not the last measure to fight the problem of black money or corruption. As and when more measures are required, I am sure the government will take it. Now, having said that, I would like to mention that today I was talking to some bank chairman and MD and CEOs, and almost every bank today is receiving larger number of applications for issue of credit cards, debit cards, for having e-wallet facilities, to get new checkbooks. There are customers who never used a checkbook, now they are coming back to use a checkbook. So therefore we are moving, more number of transactions which were happening, which were cash transactions. I think it's moving towards digital transaction, it's moving towards transactions through the banking channel and accountability, and I think we are moving to a more accountable and a more transparent economy. And all these measures eventually, I am sure, will contribute to the overall growth of India. These inconveniences are small inconveniences compared to the medium term and the long term gain which the country will get.
I hope you're right on that again, Mr. Das. I have my doubts, of course, but I'm going to ask you that, this entire argument is premised on two basic assumptions. One, that the entire cash economy was illegal, which is not true, unlike in the case of Mauritius, where almost all the transactions were illegal. Let's be very clear about that, number one. Number two, there is the assumption that India can make that leap into a digital economy in a time where even in Delhi, a place like the capital of the country, we don't have smooth net connectivity. So are these two assumptions, have we put the cart before the horse, taken a leap before we were really ready for it? Should we have prepared the ground better? And then, I'm not disputing the merits of the move. I'm just wondering whether it was slightly hasty and slightly ill thought of. The entire consequences perhaps are not thought of, given the huge cash economy, which is perfectly legitimate cash economy.
No, you are absolutely right, to the extent that all cash transactions are not illegal. I entirely agree with you. I mean, obviously, there have to be small transactions which have to be carried out in cash. Cash transactions are an essential part of any economy, that cannot be denied. And also, not all money which is coming to the bank as deposits are illegal. There is hard-earned money of people. It's a typical, tradition of Indian households to keep, to save money from monthly income or monthly expenditure. Almost every housewife, saves some money. Every Indian household, it's a normal practice. And certain businesses also require that you keep some amount of cash, which is a part of the income tax declaration form, where you have a cash on hand. So therefore, cash transactions are a normal part of any economy. But the question is, what should be the percentage of cash transaction? So in India, the percentages are much higher. You know the statistics. Now, with regard to the preparedness, we are not saying that overnight we will move completely to a digital economy. But given the infrastructure that we have today, given the net connectivity facilities that we have today, given the huge amount of mobile penetration that we have today, I think we are lagging behind in terms of digital, digital transactions. The infrastructure is there, but the quantum, the volume of digital transactions are far behind the current level of infrastructure. So I would not agree that we are not ready in terms of infrastructure, in terms of net internet connectivity, or in terms of mobile penetration. We have to improve there. I don't deny that. But considering where we are in those areas, our volume of cash transactions are far behind, and it needs to catch up.
No, sure, it does need to catch up, but if people were confident that the infrastructure was there,
volume of digital transactions,
sure.
I think I said.
But if people were confident that the infrastructure, supporting infrastructure were there, would we have seen the kind of distress that we are seeing? And has the government done enough to assuage the distress of the people? And following from that, will the government pay a political price for it?
You see, political price is something about which I cannot comment as a bureaucrat. So I think that question, you are addressing it to the wrong person. But I think we are absolutely convinced the government is very focused, and there are inconveniences. Right from day one, we have said that there are inconveniences. Most of it was anticipated. But you said that the flip-flop, reducing from 4,000, 4,500 to 2,000. Now, why it had to be done is that the queues were not going down because the same people were coming back again and again. We have video footages, we have photographs, we have reports given by various agencies. The same people were coming back again and again. Organized groups were getting into the act and converting black money into white. Obviously, government cannot be a silent spectator. So this is a decision which government had to take to deal with the emerging situation. And as you know, I mean, people have very intelligent minds, fertile minds. People have new ideas of, bypassing the rules and the regulations. So we have to catch up. We have to react to it as and when required. So the decision
I'm sorry for coming in.
Please come.
My friend couldn't have planned as you have planned. You've already planned thank you speakers, a scintillating session that gave you a sense of... This sort of a planning cannot be done in an exercise that you did. This event that is being organized, the thanks is already there on the screen behind you. So, you have to keep a few things behind. When you are doing an operation of this scale, there are no perfect solutions to such problems. You evolve as you go along. And there would be problems. The Prime Minister himself said in his first ever speech in the evening. I heard that. He said that there will be inconvenience. And when a step of this scale is taken, the implications are there to be seen. Now, we can have a hindsight wisdom and say, you should have seen this, you should have seen that. Obviously, there can be improvement, and all improvements are being done on a day-to-day basis. But fundamentally, we all agree that the decision was correct. I don't think anyone sitting here would doubt that decision, because the objective was absolutely clear in the speech of the Prime Minister. What happened thereafter, a lot of it was planned, was executed, but you can't anticipate everything that is going to happen. It is a fluid situation. The scale is huge. Look at the scale of operation. Sitting in Delhi, you can't plan everything. But I think whatever that has been done, and going by what has been happening in the past couple of days, with the queues, the length has been coming down, I think it will improve over a period of time. We'll have to bear with it. But since the decision is fundamentally correct, I think if there are inconveniences, we have to live with those inconveniences.
Mr. Pujari, I wanted to ask, sorry, Mr. Swarup, I wanted to ask you, did Mr. Das come to your aid when the CAG report on coal came and you were under fire, because you're coming to his rescue so readily? First
of all, I was never under fire. I was sitting on the hottest seat in the country when I took over as coal secretary. When I asked a friend of mine, when I was posted as coal secretary, I asked a friend of mine, I asked him, "Yaar, coal sector kaisa hai?" He said, "Gangs of Wasipur dekhi hai kya?" So that was the sector that I came in. And I am glad that by God's grace and an absolutely amazing team that I have, today we are looking for our clients. We want to sell coal. We are no more living in a shortage economy of coal. So it's different.
Are you looking over your shoulder now when you walk on the street?
No, I am not coming to his rescue. I am just stating a few facts before you. And I repeat again, you can plan an event like this, even a thank you can be planned in advance. But there are few things you can't plan everything in advance. And since you have to keep it secret, there are few things you can't lay out well in advance. If you do that, a planner would say, why didn't you do this? Why didn't you do that? You do that and the cat will be out of the bag. So let's try and understand the limitations within which the government was working. And it is in that context, whatever is happening, you can always suggest improvements. There can be improvements. No one can deny the fact that this could have been done, that could have been done. Let's discuss what can possibly be done now. But to delve upon that this has gone wrong, that has gone wrong, it doesn't take us anywhere. If we fundamentally agree with the decision that was taken by the government.
Yeah, I agree with you that yes, we need to move on. So Mr. Das, if I were to ask you, what steps can the government take to really change something on the ground? There is widespread distress, it may be coming down, but there is undeniably distress. So what can the government do? Will that 50-day period that the Prime Minister talked about, will it be more than 50 days? What is your assessment within the government? Can we hope for some more stops? You've given a lot of stops now to the farmers, etc. So can we expect any more kind of concessions in the coming days?
No, we have not given any, we have not given any concessions as such, but we have taken into account the requirement of cash, because now the sowing season has started. We are just in the commencement of the Rabi crop season, so farmers required cash. So we have enabled them to draw higher quantum of cash, and they are availing crop loans. Obviously, they must have the crop loan part of it. They should be able to draw and incur various sundry expenses in connection with their sowing operations. So we have taken any measures. As to what further stops are coming, I will not be able to spell out. As and when government needs to react to any situation, government will continue to react to those situations. And as my colleague said very clearly, I did try to explain it earlier, that look at the kind of transformative and the big impact it is going to produce, and compared to that, I think the inconveniences, and the Prime Minister himself had said it, the government has said it again and again, that there will be some initial inconveniences. So keeping the larger benefits that the country will derive, I think these inconveniences should not be blown out of proportion. Lot of good work is being done by the staff of the banks and the post offices across the country. Every day we are getting so many messages how each branch manager, staff of banks, how innovatively they are dealing with situations and controlling the, streamlining the operations and the, the functioning of the banks in terms of, exchanging the old notes, in terms of enabling people to put their old notes into bank accounts. So there is a lot of good work happening. There is a lot of innovative work happening across the country. I think more than 2 lakh branches of banks. So let's not, I would say that let's not, my appeal would be that there are inconveniences. But my appeal would be, please look at the larger picture. Please look at the medium term and the long term benefits. Please look at so much of good work which is being done across the country in large number of bank branches and post offices, some 25,000 plus about 1.5 lakh post offices. And keeping that in mind, I think we cannot push all the good work that is being done under the carpet by picking up incidents here and there and giving an, an unduly exaggerated emphasis on incidents of inconvenience, which is in any case there, but they are improving every day, day by day.
Okay, so I'll take your advice and look at the larger picture. And if I were to shift to the larger picture, there is a fear that because of what has happened now, it is going to impact consumption, precisely at the time when government was hoping that consumption would be the engine of growth. What kind of impact would this have on GDP growth? That 7.6% that we were hoping to reach, will it finally end the year at 7.2, 7.3, at a time when we need every basis point growth for a country like ours?
No, I think it's too early to take a call on that. Let us see how the situation plays out. It's too early to, assume that the GDP will go up, go down just because of this. So at this point of time, I would like to say this. And in any case, the tax figures so far have not been really impacted. The business transactions in many places, the functioning of the mandis and the other markets are slowly coming back to normalcy. There are still problems of, there are still areas where the trucks have got stuck, they have not moved. But that is because of other reasons, not because of not getting petrol and diesel. Not getting diesel because diesel, even today the old notes are accepted. In some places there were problems of, the mandis not functioning. We have announced yesterday that in the APMC markets and in the mandis. Now this is one situation again. As my colleague said, you cannot foresee and anticipate each and every situation. This was brought to our notice that the mandis, the agricultural APMC markets are having difficulty because they also need some sundry cash for day-to-day requirements. So immediately government took a decision and allowed, enabled them to draw up to 50,000 rupees cash. So therefore the mandis also, we expect the agricultural producers markets to come back to normalcy.
Are there any other quick fixes? Because this is all about quick fixes. Can you think of any quick fixes really to ensure that GDP does not get impacted, distress is minimized?
No, we are, you see the note on the production of notes on our printing presses are in full swing. They're working 3 shifts every day, and more notes are now coming into the market. 500 rupee notes have also been introduced. They're coming into the market now. They will come in bigger numbers in the coming weeks. So the situation will ease out over the next, I would say over the next, I would say in the next 10-15 days.
So then now let me shift to another very big move that the government has made is on GST. GST again is supposed to be a path-breaking reform. But there again, there are a number of issues where we still haven't got the nuts and bolts together. So in this bid to have it launched on the 1st of April next year, are we likely to again overlook some things that we might have overlooked as in the case of the demonetization and then, kind of shoot ourselves in the foot? Or is it better to have everything ready and then launch GST? How important is that 1st April date? Should we look at it as sacrosanct or be more pragmatic about it?
I think in each of your questions you are putting a lot of your own judgments that as we did not anticipate in this move
have to give me that liberty,
this
Mr.
thing,
Das, just as I'm giving you the
as
liberty
we
to
this
respond.
thing. Now these are your opinions.
Absolutely,
And
yes, of course.
I would beg to differ. And GST is very much on track. The draft legislation has been circulated. The other, the operational, what you call the rules connected with the GST legislation, the GST law also have been drafted in consultation with the various state governments. So the 1st April 2017 very much stands, and the states are completely on board. There will be always some, there will be always some unexpected developments. You cannot foresee 100% of the, how the situation plays out. There will be some new challenges, some new situations you will be confronted with, and
okay,
we will deal with it. We will deal with it.
You showed the picture of Hasmukh Adia to be present in this. Why don't you plan that he will not be here? There are situations when you don't find things happening the way you plan them. There would be changes. There will always be. I'm showing you in this very event where everything could have been planned. You showed the photo of my colleague, Hasma Kadia, there. He had to be present here. But for some reason he's not here. No one can be blamed for it. Situations do evolve. The key is whether I'm prepared to handle that situation and how quickly I can do that. On that front, if you raise an issue, I'll agree with you. But to say that, why didn't you plan this, why didn't you plan that, I can say, I have mentioned two things. One, that screen of yours, I can mention many more. But it doesn't help anybody. Let's not look into what has happened in the past.
No, it's not a question
I mean, in a discussion like this, I would suggest, okay, discuss what has happened, few things right, few things wrong. What is for the future? That is what I think. If four secretaries are sitting here, if we can't talk about the future, then what are we talking about? Yeah. Digging the grave? If you look it into the past and keep digging the grave, and I tell you, in coal sector, if you dig to the past, you'll only get stench. We are looking ahead.
No, which is why I asked him, what do you expect the impact to be on GDP? I'm looking ahead. When you look ahead, it might be something positive, it might be something negative. I think one has to look at it dispassionately, and there might be a temporary downside. And as long as the upside in the long term is there, I'm not saying that one needs to be cognizant of it. And I must say, Mr. Swarup,
why are you so obsessed with numbers? I mean,
because it's an economic
no, I keep going back to coal, because in coal we are not obsessed with numbers and we sorted it out. Because we were obsessed with processes. You be obsessed with processes. What is it? GDP number. I am thankfully not an economist, so I don't talk of numbers only. We talk of processes. I am glad that you raised certain points about demonetization. Well taken. Now let us look ahead what we do in that. You're talking of GDP will come down. Who's going to guess whether GDP is going to come down? And 6 months down the line, you will have another seminar sitting here. You said GDP will come down, but it went up. How many times economists have announced that GDP has gone up and gone down? No one has cared to look back and see what they announced, what is the GDP today. Why should we make it into just an academic discussion?
Please don't take this amiss, because we're just asking him for his view. I agree, GDP numbers nobody can say, but I'm asking him as his assessment.
You badgered him sufficiently.
No, I want my last question, Mr. Das. I believe you have to go. So one very quick question I want to ask is that the government has done a great deal. I'm not denying that in setting the plumbing right. There's been enormous effort put into it. But despite all that, we're seeing private investment is just not taking off. What is really holding private investment back to your mind, and what can the government do, if anything, to get it charged again?
You see, on the GDP, since you mentioned it again, I have said that overall in the medium term, in the long term, this is extremely positive. This decision on old 500, 1,000 rupee notes is extremely positive for GDP. The entire country has welcomed the move. I think I would again like to emphasize, please look at the positive aspect of this huge decision. It will produce results. It will completely transform the way Indian economy functions. So far as the private sector investment you are mentioning, the private sector investment, government has, whenever government had to intervene in a particular area, government has taken all the measures that are required. Recently, for example, the construction sector brought certain problems to their notice, notice of the government, and the construction, so far as the construction sector is concerned, we found that a lot of money was held up in various kinds of arbitration. Even after the initial, arbitration award went in favor of somebody, the authorities were not paying up, or having, supposing there was a court verdict and it went against you, you go on appeal and don't. You see, so we have enabled that some 75% of payment can be made, so that there is cash flow. I mean, there is funds flow. I would not use the word cash flow, but there is fund flow into the sector. So immediately, whenever measures are required, government has proactively taken the measures. Now, I would again appeal, I mean, you have a very knowledgeable and very sort of intelligent crowd here, and I would like to appeal to you, please look at it this way. Let's not have a knee-jerk reaction to any situation. If I'm a batsman, I go out and in my first innings I get out at 0, then Sachin Tendulkar would have retired in the, in the first series of his. I mean, you have to hold on. You have to stick on. They're all leading industry leaders, business leaders, they know it. I mean, you have bad times, but you need to hold on. You need to fight it out. You have to face the situation.
When will they start investing?
So therefore, on this issue of, before closing this discussion on this 500 and 1,000 rupee notes, I would like to say, let's not, based on some 10 days experience, 8 days or 9 days experience, let's not have any knee-jerk conclusions. Let's wait for the situation to play out and things will improve. It will be positive for the economy. Now, private sector investment, I have mentioned, as and when various steps are taken, it has been taken in coal sector, in power sector, and in overall in industry. I mean, my colleagues are here. I'm sure they'll be able to explain what kind of steps have been taken in individual sectors to see that the investments, take place. FDI, the numbers are huge. They are, the inflow, I think last year, 56 billion US dollar inflow was, I think, the highest that we have recorded. So there are a lot of positives, which I'm sure my colleagues would be able to highlight. But I think having said that, at this point of time, you will excuse me.
I know you have to go. Thank you very much, Mr. Das.
Thank you.
It's great having you. Thank you very much. Please give him a hand. Thank you very much. Well, with Mr. Das gone, I think we're really going to kind of now have to carry on the discussion with my other panelists, who I'm sure will do as good a job as he did batting for the government. But Mr. Abhishek, if I could ask you something that he talked about, why private investment is not taking off. And actually a lot of it really has to do with the fact that ease of doing business in India still hasn't changed, apart from the rankings that we just saw, 130. We're stuck at 130. Okay, technically we moved up one rank, because last year we were 131. But the point is that despite whatever the government has done, and I concede that the government has done a great deal, it's not easy to do business in India. Now, is that the reason why corporate India is not investing? And what can we do? What more can we do?
See, when the government started focusing on improving ease of doing business in the country and creating a business climate which is conducive to investments, there was always difficulty in ease of doing business. It's not a new development. What the government has done in last 2 years is to take a very series of concerted measures and efforts in both central government and the state governments and the regulators to improve things. Now, no one is claiming that everything has become easy, but I think there have been very substantial and concrete achievements in the last 2 years, and a lot of things have been done which will be reflected in the many of the rankings which will come in the later years. But if you look at the kind of competitive federalism that we have among states now to improve a business climate, insolvency and bankruptcy code, we never had a code. Now we have a code, it is being implemented now. The target is to implement it by December this year. GST itself will provide enormous ease of doing business. Construction permit in Delhi, Mumbai, so many states, you can get actually construction permit in 30 days now, something that was taking years. We are removing the physical touch points. We are absolutely making everything online so that people simply don't have to worry about contacting anyone. All this, trading across borders. The customs have a huge now development.
Why is business not convinced? You've done so much, you say, and I concede that you have done. But why are you not able to carry business with you?
If you see the kind of business climate that has happened in the last 2 years, and we agree that a lot more needs to be done. See, you look at the FDI policies. From Make in India program was launched by the Honorable Prime Minister in September 14. From October 14 to September 16, we have had $79 billion of FDI in this country, which is 60% improvement over the corresponding period.
But our Desi corporates don't seem particularly to buy your story, because if you look at gross fixed capital formation, it's about the lowest it has been for many, many years.
See, we all know the reasons why a lot of investments have not picked up in many sectors. There are regions of global slowdown. There are creating of excess capacities in the last few years. We all know that. But then the important thing is that under Make in India, the ease of doing business is a big priority. A lot of work is being done on FDI policies, the skill development, infrastructure development. All these we are doing a lot of work on that. A lot of results are visible, but a lot many results will be visible in the coming years.
Okay. Mr. Pujari, on the power sector, I think in fact this is one area where even the ease of doing business gives a great deal of credit as far as obtaining electricity is concerned. We've actually moved up 25 ranks. And from a situation of deficit, we've moved to surplus. But it's not as if power problems have been solved in any way. In fact, if you look at particularly on the GST, electricity is out of it. So all power plants, in fact, will be in even a worse situation than they are today. NPAs will rise. So what can we do about the power sector? You have the problems with DISCOM, but Uday is not going to be an answer. Uday is the third attempt at getting the DISCOMs to behave. Ultimately, unless tariffs are increased, and that's a political economy question. So what can we do to the power sector?
See, when you talk about power sector, you look at three segments. The one is generation. Now, today we are in a position where we have got sufficient capacity for generation. I mean, if any demand picks up, there is no constraint as far as supplying power, generating power is concerned. There is sufficient capacity today. There is sufficient capacity, about 50,000 megawatt in the pipeline, and a lot of renewable is coming. So generation is an area which we have more or less tackled, at least in the medium term, till 2022. What we have been focusing is the transmission, because if generation are in one place and the load center keeps changing, so we should be able to transmit power quickly. So the problem that we had, the congestion in the southern region where we were not able to evacuate power, though there was demand and there was available somewhere, that the huge investment that government has made in the last 2 years, and the circuit kilometer that we have added and MVA capacity that we have added had made it possible to transfer power from one region to another region. So that is possible now. And the investment is going to go up also in the future, because we want to bring in, when the renewable is coming into the system, ensure that power can be transferred from place A to place B as and when required. The third segment is the distribution segment. So distribution segment is an area which is the weakest link, we agree. Uday, that was discussed, I'll not go to the details, but it is much, much different from what we tried earlier. It is not a sort of bailout package that we say that, okay, here is, we do some restructuring and then money is available to you at low rate to take out the medium. It is a very, very hard decision. First of all, Uday is an optional scheme. Being an optional scheme also, most of the state governments have adopted it, and they have taken over the liability of the DISCOM and taken the responsibility to make sure that the DISCOM operate in a operationally profitable way. Otherwise, the losses of the DISCOM will be counted against the fiscal deficit of the state government.
But how many states have increased the tariffs?
Two issues. If you look at the tariff increase is not the only solution, but if I just answer that question straight away, if you look at the tariff increases in the current year, except 4 to 5 states, everybody else has increased the tariff. Now, you may ask questions saying that the tariff increase is not commensurate with the generation or the cost of the generation. But the DISCOMs are having problem because of two reasons. One is the AT&C losses. Losses are high. Secondly, the cost of generation is high because the delivery cost is high. And thirdly is the internal debt burden that they were carrying. Now, debt burden issue has been addressed. AT&C losses, we are really focusing on reducing the AT&C losses. On an average, in national level, it is about 23-24%. We intend to bring it to 15%. It is not an easy task. It cannot be done at a macro level. It has to be done at the disintegrated level. So what we are doing now is that urban area, which gets about 60 to 65% of the power, there are about 35,000 feeders. We have got all the feeders out of 35,000, about 26,000 of feeders online onto our portal, and now we are start analyzing which feeder has losses. So we are getting into the micro part of it, helping the DISCOM and the state government to take action. So that is the only solution. As far as the cost of generation is concerned, thanks to the coal ministry, which has improved the quality of the coal, and because of the flexibility that we have given in rationalizing the linkages, the cost of generation has come down. Taking NTPC per se, you take NTPC itself, because of this improved quality in the coal, because of the coal rationalization, the cost of generation has, on average, for NTPC, which constitutes about 47,000 megawatt of power, the cost of generation has come down by 35 paise. The specific consumption of coal has come down. That means they require now less coal to generate 1 unit of power. And that benefit goes on to the benefit. So, if you look at in the 6 months that has happened, the gap between the average cost of supply and average cost of revenue of the DISCOMs is coming down. It will not come down in one day. It will take some time. We are monitoring closely, and definitely the DISCOMs, we hope, by end of the current financial year or by middle of next financial year, will at least break even.
So can we be confident that there will not be a subsequent bailout of any of these DISCOMs? We've seen 3. This is the 3rd. Will there be another version of it?
There is no bailout. In this scheme, Government of India has not given a single pie. What has happened is that we told the state government, you cannot keep distance. You say that DISCOM is a separate entity, I am a separate entity, all the losses dictate.
But we did that under the FRS program also. 2013, we did exactly the same thing.
No,
the state government took it onto their books.
No. We say that you take over, and we allowed the banks to finance the losses. Now here we have mandated saying that banks will not finance the losses. That means the DISCOMs are forced to generate internal revenue. Today the DISCOMs are very, very put in a tight corner because the banks are not financing the losses there. That means they have to generate losses, generate enough revenue to run the business, or if they fail, the state government has to come out and fund them. So the responsibility of the state government is there. So normally the complaint that comes saying that, okay, a lot of free power is being supplied, the government has to think twice, state government has to think twice before they actually take a decision.
Okay, I hope you're right on that. But Mr. Swarup, I can turn to you. I know you're in a far better position than you were 2 years ago. And as you said, yes, you were never on the firing line, but you were in a very hot seat. And I also want to use this opportunity before I ask you my question, is to say that you asked us why, we had, of course, slipped up on some things, and why are we not equally charitable to the government? No, just one very quick point. I'll tell you why. Because you have 1 billion people counting on your every word. I don't have so many people listening to what ET now does, unfortunately. If I had a 1 billion people, I would not be, I'd be far, far happier. So that is the difference between an IAS officer and administrator. Everything that you say or do, you have 1 billion people counting on your words, hanging on to your words. So that really is the reason why. And as a public servant,
to hear that, no?
no, as a public servant, I think you must be prepared that the citizens will question you, and they should question you also, so you shouldn't take objection to that. But my question to you is on the coal front, really. This auctioning process that you've gone through, yes, it's been very transparent, it's very good. But in hindsight, have auctions really been the best way? Because we don't see that much traction on the ground as far as the new coal blocks that you have auctioned have concerned.
First of all, there was no other better alternative than to auction these coal mines. Because that was the only way that we could get the value for a natural resource and it could go to the right entity. That is one. So there was no other option. Secondly, traction on the ground. Let's understand the ground reality as it existed 2 years ago and as it exists today. The ground reality 2 years ago was that there was panic amongst power generating companies because they were not getting coal. There was shortage of coal in the country, acute shortage of coal. In fact, I used to get calls from chief ministers, chief secretaries. I used to fly down at short notice to sit with chief ministers to work out how coal could be supplied. What has happened in past 2 years is there's a phenomenal growth in supply of coal. So much so that I have virtually become redundant. That's how we should be. The ministry also seems to have become redundant. So that's the case where we are. Now, if that is the scenario, then we don't feel the pinch if the mining in the mines that were auctioned were not to the level that I had probably visualized. But I must tell you that out of the 29 mines that could have been mined, 13 mines are already mining. More than 20 million tons of coal is already there. So there is no shortage of coal. So the bottom line is not how much did the coal mines mine, but the bottom line is whether they got the coal that they require. Now, if they can get a coal conveniently from Coal India, either through auction or through, why should they go ahead and expedite those mining? Which in any case they are doing. I'm not saying that they shouldn't do it, and they are not doing it. Probably the panic with which it all started, that panic is not there, and hence probably the pace at which they should have done it, they're not doing it. But let me assure you, we are monitoring it very closely. They are at it. A number of mines are back in the courts of law. When the decision comes, we'll do it. Fortunately, so far we won every case that has gone to the court. But what has happened is, it has delayed a few activities. That's what is happening.
Okay, and now that I have the opportunity of having both the Power Secretary and the Coal Secretary on the same forum, I want to ask you a question. The fact that you have one minister looking after both these two important ministries, has that in any way made life much easier for the two sectors? And is that the right way to go in other areas also? Agriculture, many other ministries, where you have a host of ministries looking after the same thing. And that makes it very much more difficult to coordinate. Is the success, relative success in power and coal, because of the fact that you don't have those turf battles?
No, I can say with certainty this was a masterstroke, to have one minister. Because we sit across a table, the two of us sit with the minister, and we sort it out amongst ourselves. So I think most of the issues, you would have barely ever found a power secretary appreciating coal sector or coal secretary. This has happened because we have a minister. It's not that we don't have differences. We do have differences like anybody else. But we sit across the table, we sort it out amongst ourselves. And that's why the sector has picked up.
Can I just add one more? Today also, I'm holding charge of Secretary of Renewable Energy. So there's one more cohesion into the group. So that again is an issue, because when the conventional power and the renewable you handle together, there are very inherently conflicting situations.
Many advantages, but I'm afraid it's 6 o'clock and it's time for us to close this session. But very quickly, Mr. Ramesh Abhishek, if I can ask you, that what can the DIPP do in order to ensure that in the remaining 2.5 years that we have, programs like Make in India, all these things really get the necessary traction? Are there any quick fixes that we can do in 2.5 years where you will see the benefits also on the ground in these 2.5 years?
All these essential elements of Make in India, like creating a policy environment, having the suitable tax policies, skill development, ease of doing business, and of course, very important, infrastructure. So all that has to continue. You know that government is already spending massive amounts of money on building infrastructure. That is something that will show results in the medium term. That is going on. Skill development is another very critical area on which government is focusing on. This Ministry of Skill Development has identified for the next 6 years, till 2022, the kind of skills that are required in various sectors, the resources required, and how that is to be done. Ease of doing business, the work will go on relentlessly. We need to do a lot. We are doing a lot, but we will continue. We'll continue to engage with the stakeholders, industry, continuously learn, and then respond. I may also add here that in the next few years, another program that will see huge amount of traction is Startup India. We have the third largest ecosystem of startups in the world, and our young entrepreneurs, full of ideas, innovation, and technology, are doing extremely good work. And the kind of enabling environment that our Prime Minister has promised to startups in the country, we are implementing that, and we are very confident that in the coming years, startups will play a big role in Make in India and making our country proud of their entrepreneurship.
This is a question that perhaps I'd like to ask all three of you before we close, really. That as far as employment generation is concerned, we haven't seen any employment generation at all. Most of the growth has been jobless growth. Now, in your specific sectors, is there scope really to create additional jobs? What kind of scope is there? Our public-private partnership, is that model dead? Can we really hope for any revival of that? Can I start with you, Mr. Abhishek? Startup, how many jobs can you really create over there?
See, if there are many sectors, which are labor-intensive sectors. Recently, you have seen the government gave a package of 6,000 crores and also many non-tax incentives for promoting the garment sector. That is the top job-generating sector. Another very important sector is the leather and footwear sector, gems and jewelry. So government is making special efforts to see that these sectors get the kind of support and incentive they require. So far as the manufacturing is concerned, it's true that as we get more smarter in manufacturing, Industry 4.0 comes in, there will not be too much of job creation. But when you have growth in manufacturing, then there is more growth of jobs in the services sector. So it's not the manufacturing sector that will see a lot of job increase maybe, but the impact will be felt in the services sector. If you see the startups, the kind of aggregators of cars and hotel rooms and a lot of other services that e-commerce is providing, lakhs and lakhs of jobs are being created in the service sector. In the logistics sector, infrastructure is developing, the logistics is developing.
So you're hopeful that job generation
Absolutely.
will happen?
I think job generation is going to happen more and more as we have more and more investments, efficiencies, e-commerce and manufacturing. So you will see a lot of job growth.
Mr. Pujari, power sector is not a sector where we really expect to see job creation, but you contribute by making power available. Is there any other way really that the power sector can really make a difference to job creation?
I'll give you one example. Now, Government of India has focused on the LED, and we are basically substituting the normal bulbs with the LED bulbs. So what has happened is that the peak load that is required has come down by about 15,000 to 20,000 megawatt. Somebody can saying that by doing the LED or focusing on energy efficiency, you avoided this capacity. You could have set up a power plant, okay? But setting up a power plant is basically, you don't create long-term job because it is only construction time, and normally the power plants work very automatically. When you created a market for the energy efficiency in LED, look at the service sector. In the service sector, what impact you have created. The LED assembly bulbs have come up. The ESCO model, companies are coming out. They are replacing the bulbs. They are replacing the street light. The service, they are maintaining all the contracts. They say that is to maintain for 5 years. So actually, you are creating job on the field at the lowest level. So what you have done is that you avoided investment of 20,000 megawatt of power plant. That is about, say, you could have invested about 80,000 crores. But what you did is that created huge employment opportunity in the service sector at the lower end. So the nature is changing. When you look at what is the investment that is taking place, the nature is changing. You get into the transmission line, the maintenance, distribution, the maintenance, the employment is created at the lower level. So that is where the focus is now. So large-scale investment in the capacity at the moment, the capacity addition, probably I don't foresee in the next 2 to 3 years, large-scale capacity addition will continue, but not in the way we did in the last 4 years. But jobs will be created at the low end.
Mr. Swarup, I'm not going to ask you about job creation, but I'm going to ask you about, are you perhaps the only Indian celebrating Mr. Trump's victory? Because he's very favorably inclined towards coal, and he's not bothered about climate change. He doesn't believe in it. So any fears that we might have to wind down our reliance on coal, thermal energy, all those are likely to go on the back burner. So are you quietly celebrating Mr. Trump's victory?
No, I am quietly celebrating what is happening in the coal sector in the country itself, irrespective of Trump or no Trump. So we won't be really impacted by what Mr. Trump says. We had planned it that way. We were planned for 1 billion tons of coal production. We are going ahead with that. Whether Mr. Trump had won or someone else would have won.
But the reliance on thermal energy you don't see coming down?
See, let's try and understand. We have such a huge space available in terms of energy requirement in this country that though a lot of space will be occupied by non-conventional energy like solar energy, you can't wish away coal. I keep telling everyone, you can't wish away coal, but our attempt will be to wash coal, certainly.
Can I just clarify? Yeah. Today, out of 300 gigawatt of capacity, about 1.6 gigawatt is of coal-based. Now, we committed in INDC in Paris, COP21, saying that by 2030, we will have 40% of the capacity from the non-fossil fuel. Now, capacity you are looking at is about 650 gigawatt. Out of that 40%, you see how much capacity, the thermal capacity one has to add. So, we will be sticking to our commitment, but there will be a need to add capacity both in the renewable and also in the thermal. And for energy security point of view, we can't on long term depend on gas. So it has to be our own, the domestic supply coal. So there will be emphasis on the coal, but we will be doing the supercritical so that the impact technology will follow, so that the impact on the environment is minimal. And also we will encourage large-scale renewable to integrate into the system. So
could we just throw the floor open? Are there any questions over there which people are dying to ask? Otherwise, I will continue. So in case you have any questions, please think about it, and then you can raise your hands. I'll turn to you very shortly. Mr. Abhishek, I wanted to ask you, as far as this cooperative federalism, competitive federalism, etc. is concerned, how much of it is just about ticking the boxes? Because yes, we've passed a bankruptcy code, so you get a tick in your ease of India doing business. But nothing has really changed on the ground, and it's not going to change unless you do something about judicial reform. Enforcement of contract is something that contracts are just not worth the paper they're written on in this country, unfortunately. So what is one really doing to see that the states really follow through and they do what they say they are doing, and it actually makes a difference to how people on the ground react?
So this is a very important point. In last year, there was 98 action points with the states on ease of doing business. This year, we have evaluated them with the World Bank team on 340 points, and we have seen a tremendous competition. Now, we had a meeting with the state government representatives a few days back, and we are all by and large agreed that coming year, we have to evaluate states on the basis of public feedback.
Okay.
Because right now, we have seen the changes they have made in laws, systems, processes, procedures, which was very important, that we will continue to see. But in collaboration with the states, this is a collaborative effort. Under federal setup, we have no business to evaluate states, but it is being done only with the assistance and cooperation of the states. So it is agreed that ground level feedback, user feedback is very critical. That has to be factored in. In what way it will be done is something that is being worked upon. But I can assure you that the states are aware. The states who are competing very hard, and you see the scores, 12 states have got 91% and more score in that index, because it is being done on a public platform. So there's a lot of pressure on them actually, that if you want to attract investment, investors are free to go anywhere, whether it's a foreign investor or domestic investor. So unless they provide an easy climate, and of course there are a lot of other issues, infrastructure, law and order, etc. So the states are extremely conscious, and they are competing very hard among themselves to attract investors. I don't think they have a choice.
Mr. Pujari, do you see any kind of correlation between what is happening in the power sector in the different states and how the states are performing on the ease of doing business? Because you normally expect that power is a very critical part of investment in any state. So is there any correlation that the states that are well-ranked, Andhra, Telangana, etc., are they states where the SEBs have done a great deal, or are they not? Is there no correlation really?
No, there is a direct correlation, and if you look at all the states who are in the high ranking on the ease of doing business, their power sector, the system operates quite efficiently. Their power surplus, their reliability, availability, and reliable and quality power. I'm not talking about the cost. Cost could be high, but then there is a separate issue altogether. And there is also easy. I mean, it's not very difficult to get the connection. So there is a direct correlation, and since power is one of the major, major requirement or raw material for setting up any industries, I think this is generally expected, and it is availability, reliable, and quality power. Those are the important ones.
You want to add something?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, we have also discussed with the states that some of the parameters next year must be the quality of infrastructure that is available in the state, quality of electricity, number of hours, SEDI and SEFI, all the quotients, and of course the investment on skill development and all that, contract enforcement, amount of money that they are spending, and the results from the judicial infrastructure. All those things are very important, and now we are working out with them how those can be factored into this parameters of ease of doing business. One more thing we are planning to do is that even the process of giving licenses, renewals, all that is taking a lot of time in so many states. So we are also planning to incorporate all that.
As far as coal is concerned, the first question that occurs to you when you talk about coal, sugar, these are industries, the first thing is why don't we denationalize coal? Because gone are the days we thought we moved out of socialist days in 1991, but this is a huge issue. Not only it's still publicly owned, but even the prices are not left to be determined by market forces. When are we going to see that change?
You used a big term, denationalize, and much before that there are many other things to be done. First, we have to go in for commercial mining. Let Coal India do what it is doing, and let there be commercial mining as well, parallelly, so that some competition could emerge. I am a great believer in going step by step, because as a student of history, I've realized that all revolutions lead to dictatorship. Even French Revolution did that. So let's go step by step. We've demonstrated in coal that you can actually move at a very fast pace and change the scenario, which we've done. And let me come back to the issue of states that they were discussing. In my understanding, center is a fiction. All action happens in the state. And people ask me to give one reason why coal happened in this country. It happened because I didn't hold a single meeting with the state governments in Delhi. I traveled to each of the states once in every 2 months, sat with the senior officers there, conveyed a value proposition to them. To me, that's critical. The moment we are able to convey a value proposition and package it appropriately and tell the state governments, then things will start happening as they have happened in coal sector, where we have had our clearances, we've acquired land as never before, we've given employment as never before. This has happened because we moved to the state, and hence, to my mind, states have a very, very important role to play, and we have to go down to the states to make things happen there.
Absolutely. Mr. Swarup, you were also heading the project monitoring group under the earlier government. Do you see any change as far as, I know it's no longer your portfolio as such, but from what you have seen, because you had a long experience, do you see any change in the way projects are handled now? Do you see the bottlenecks have been removed? Do you see faster offtake in any of these projects, or are there still many obstacles which still need to be cleared?
I took a lot of lessons from my previous experience. In fact, I have set up a similar portal in the coal ministry, and my take is very simple. No matter how inefficient I am, to the public I'd like to appear to be efficient. The moment you make things transparent, files start moving, and that's why I would like to inform you that coal ministry, we have done away with papers and files. We don't have any paper or files. Everything is transparent and digital. That has helped me. It gives me time to come here and have a chat with you.
And also the fact that, as I said, you're no longer in the hot seat. Now it's for Mr. Das who's in the hot seat. That also makes a difference. But if I were to ask you, what would your wish list be for the next 2.5 years for this government in your sector?
In coal sector, we are looking at the following things. Number one, to do away with great slippage, which is a problem. Quality we are trying to address, we hopefully will address it. Environment is second issue. Though we are extracting coal, we believe that environment should be sustained. So we are using technology, we are using satellite mapping to see that forestation happens. The protocol is that for every hectare that I mine, 2.4 hectares should be forested. Now we are going to monitor it very closely. We are going ahead with washing of coal. So as I said, we can't wish away coal, but we can settle wash coal.
So these are your this is your blueprint for the next. And Mr. Pujari, your wish list for the next 2.5 years, and ideally, it's what can be achieved within the next 2.5 years.
Yeah, as I mentioned earlier, is a distribution sector which is a key area. So we, as Honorable Prime Minister, had given a target to us to take electricity to all those 18,000 odd villages which are not electrified after 60, 70 years of independence. We will be completing the task in next 6 months. So our next biggest challenge will be, yes, we have taken the power to all the villages, but are the households connected or not? So the biggest challenge that is coming up for us, which we are taking voluntarily, to make sure, saying that in next 3 to 4 years, all the households especially in the rural areas, remote areas, they have access to electricity, either through the grid. If not possible to go through the grid because of, say, forest and other reasons, then off-grid solution has to be done. That's number one. And make sure that the distribution companies, all the DISCOM, they turn around, they make money, because it is, we don't want them to make large profit, but they should be making enough money to buy power and supply and investing in the distribution sector. And I think that the way the things are being done, the things are being implemented, and as was mentioned by the Coal Secretary, since it is basically to be done by the state government, and our interaction with the state government gives us enough encouragement to feel, to make, be sure, saying that this is a doable one, and we will be able to do it.
But how do you handle the problem that is faced in agriculture? Because every time elections come up, state governments invariably announce that agriculture, the power will be supplied free to them. And since agriculture is a state subject, it becomes very much more difficult for you to ensure that you do have 100% metering, you do charge for power. So does that not come back to the same issue once again? How do you ensure that state governments become more responsible?
Let me clarify. I told earlier saying that those urban areas, large urban areas which has population of more than 10,000 population, they consume about 60 to 65% of the power in the whole country. The rural areas consume about 20 to 22%. So even if we presume saying that everything is consumed by agriculture, it is 20%. So the issue is not the losses, and the issue when you talk about is not in the 20%, it is the 80% where you do concentrate, or that's especially what we are doing, number one. Number two, if the government, state government announces to supply free power to the agriculture, they may do so, but the mandate is that, or they are obliged to give the subsidy to the DISCOM on time, not as per the estimated power supply, but on the actual power supply. So what we have done is that we are putting meter on each of the agriculture feeders. It is just basically measure the power flows to these feeders. It is getting, again, going to the state headquarters, to the data center, to us, and based on that, we will see whether state government is releasing subsidy, and are they releasing subsidy in time. So as long as the state government gives the subsidy, and gives the subsidy in time, the issue is addressed. Whether the agriculturists pay, or the state government levies taxes or cesses and get the money and pays it back, it is purely a political judgment. But we've been taking that the subsidy is given by the state government, where the problem basically, as I mentioned earlier, lies in this 75 to 80% of power supply in the urban area. If we can address the AT&C losses there, the large part of the issues will be resolved. There may still be dispute saying that X amount was supplied to the agriculture and we got the subsidy for Y amount. There is a dispute of X and Y amount. We can live with that. We can discuss about that. But that is not going to impact the financial health of the DISCOMs. The financial health of the DISCOMs is impacted by those 60-65% of the power supply in the urban, semi-urban area, which the losses are pretty high.
So what are we doing to address those T&D losses? Basically, it's outright theft. We just call it T&D because we like euphemisms. But what are we doing to address? Well, ultimately, it becomes a law and order problem. Because when you have private DISCOMs, they cannot really do anything about stopping. Because ultimately, if they cut off the supply, then you invariably have, it becomes a law and order issue. So what can we do?
Okay, since I am also associated with the Uday scheme, let me explain it to you.
Yes.
How do we handle a problem as difficult as the one that you are mentioning? We identify areas where this problem has been sorted out, so as to demonstrate that this problem is not insurmountable. Okay. That's where you start. You have examples in this very country where this has been sorted out. States like Gujarat and Chhattisgarh have predominantly done it.
What is their T&D loss now?
Sorry?
What is the T&D loss there?
Gujarat, the T&D losses is close to about 12 to 13%. Okay. I think Telangana and Andhra Pradesh is about 10%. Okay. So, see, let's understand. There are private sector who are doing well. In Delhi also, if you look at the private sector, Tata, their T&D losses are very low. There are large DISCOMs which are public sector owned. Their also losses are low. So it is not the question of the structure. It is a question of governance and how committed you are to do it. I mean, and it's fairly feasible. What you have to do is that, the point that I made earlier, you cannot talk in macro terms. You have to go back to the nitty-gritty. So what we have done is that 35,000 feeders, which supplies about 60% of the power, that is getting metered. That is going to tell me in each of the feeder what is the losses. Suppose you come out saying that, okay, out of the 35,000, 10,000 feeders are having losses of more than 50%. It is a question of you ask the state government to address that. Not that they are not aware of it, but moment you put in the public domain and moment you tell them saying that these are the losses, I mean, they have to act. I mean,
You had asked a very pertinent question that how is this restructuring better than the previous one? It is in the context of extremely meticulous planning feeder-wise. You've come to the office to see how detailed the planning is. Every feeder detailing has been done. That sort of detailing was not done earlier. The amount of monitoring and facilitation that is happening, you have to look at the applications that have been. So it's very different from what happened in the past. You know, without debt restructuring, you could not have done anything. But it's not debt restructuring full stop. It actually is the beginning of the entire exercise. And it's a very detailed exercise.
Mr. Pujari, you raised the issue of governance, and that's a very important thing. Because if you look at even ease of doing business, in fact, two of the main things that most of the respondents say is one, corruption, and then this is going to hit very close home, is they say the bureaucracy. So when can we really see meaningful reform of the bureaucracy? There's really been virtually no administrative reform. So what can we expect to see? In fact, I think Mr. Amitabh Kant recently talked about process re-engineering. So why is it that alone, you know, the government, successive governments, not just this government, they've just not been able to make any headway? Is it that you people are far too powerful?
We can discuss reforms ad nauseum. There are reports and reports. The question is to make it happen on the ground. How do you make it happen? And I keep going back to the example that I gave. There are examples of civil servants who have performed given these limitations. Let us try and understand how did they do it, how we replicate it, how we scale it. And that can be done by creating an environment where the officer feels comfortable at giving you the feedback, at giving performance. If you recall what I said some time ago, coal sector has happened with the same set of civil servants. The difference is that the civil servants that work in the coal ministry have emerged as the finest lost of civil servants. They are civil servants, they haven't come from abroad. The point is whether we as civil servants and you as journalists are providing premium to good work that is happening. You look at the news that gets flashed in various... No one wants a good news to happen. They only want masala. Until there's a scam, you won't even watch the television. Now, my request to you and your channel and other channels is, if there's some good work being done, please highlight it. Please make that person feel happy, that institution feel happy.
Absolutely.
That is not we are doing substantially. We can talk about reforms, we can write about reforms. The question is to make it happen on the ground, and that goes for any policy.
Sure.
And additionally, I just point out saying that
time for us.
There is a need for transparency and disclosure, and that's one way which you bring pressure on the system to deliver correctly. So, and this government, and if you look at the Ministry of Power, we have got into disclosing a lot of things. Yes. And that the feedback that we get saying that you are doing certain things right, you are not doing certain things right, or the correction is required, we take it very positively and do it. So that's apart from what he's mentioned. Use of technology and transparency is other one which can bring in the...
So on that very positive note, I think it's time for us to close the session. Thank you so much, Mr. Swarup, Mr. Pujari, as well as Mr. Ravi. Thank you also for being very attentive audience. Thank you very much.
Find us on Facebook at facebook.com/ETNow, and don't forget to click the like button. You can also follow us on Twitter at ETNowLive. To stay updated with all our programming, hit the subscribe button on our YouTube channel by logging on to youtube.com/user/ETNow.